Have you ever had an experience which just completely changed your life? Where you look at it and it just changed the way you saw people, changed your perspective, changed your priorities, and just thought, you know what? Life has to be so much more than this. As a Christian, one of the greatest opportunities that we have in coming into contact with knowing Jesus Christ is where we come in contact with Him, and then we start changing our lives, we start changing our perspective, we start changing, because when we have finally come to know Him, we understand His grace in our lives. And one of the things that we understand about coming to Jesus is that He changes the way we think. He changes our priorities. He changes all those different things. But one of the greatest transitions that Jesus makes for all of us is that transition where we start maturing to the point where we start seeing people in a whole new light. That we start to value them as God values them. Where we're willing to lower ourselves and be less selfish, because we understand that people are more important. More important than things, more important than all the things that we tend to make our lives about. Sometimes it takes a humbling experience to open up your eyes and actually see people for the first time. Really to see people. To understand their hurts, their needs, their struggles. To help you put yourself in their shoes and think, you know what, I really am blessed by God. To see people and say, you know what, they're struggling. Maybe God put me here at this time for such a time as this so that I can be the one to make a difference in their lives. I think about people, even in the worldly sense, who've had these experiences. And I'm going to list a few examples of people who've had experiences where they saw people and they experienced something, and even though I don't agree with their lifestyle, I don't agree with their doctrine, I don't agree with some of those things, the basic principle of truly valuing humanity is something that really is on God's heart. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we don't show favoritism, because we're all made in the image of God. There's a reason why God wants us to love people. There's a reason why God sent His Son to die on the cross for all people, even though we are all sinners. I think about different examples. Last year, the highest paid band that was the most profitable, according to Forbes magazine, was the band U2. And the front man for the band U2 is a guy by the name of Bono. And he had this life-changing experience. He had everything that you would want. Fame, money, all those different things that we think is so great. But he had an experience. And he mentions that when he was in Africa, he performed this rocked-out concert. And as he was walking towards this plane, he saw this woman just running at him, and she ran to him, and she was holding out her son, and she was begging him, saying, please, just take him to America. Be his father. Take him. And here she's crying because no woman would want to give up their child, but she knows, if I just kept this baby, he's going to die. He didn't take that baby that day. But in his personal account, he said that even though he could have just written it off and enjoyed the parties, enjoyed everything, enjoyed his wealth and his mansion, he said he couldn't sleep at night for weeks. And all the images he saw was this woman holding out her son, saying, take him, help him. And so one of the things he did was he said, you know what, my life has been too shallow. Living for rock music, living for fame, living for money. And this is from the guy who makes the most amount of money in a band. And afterwards, he decided, you know what, I want to start making a contribution to humanity. And I don't agree with this lifestyle and a lot of things, but one thing that I do appreciate was he said, you know what, it all started in Africa. So he started with Africa, and he studied, and he researched, and he figured the biggest epidemic they had there was HIV and AIDS. Realizing that that was the #1 killer of children. And so he became an advocate. And Presidents Clinton, Bush, and Obama all said he really is the main advocate of the AIDS issue in Africa. And and people said everywhere he goes, it doesn't matter if he's at a concert, it doesn't matter if he's at a foundation, it doesn't matter if he's with friends. One of the things he always brings up is the AIDS problem in Africa and what he's doing to make sure he's trying to thwart it. Because he kept on mentioning, you know what, the reason why that boy was held up and the mother was pressing him up was the fact that that woman understood something. She knew he was going to die. And he thought, I don't want that. We think of other people in human history. We think of Gandhi. I don't agree with his belief system and such, but one of the things he experienced in his life was that he went to South Africa, which was a British colony at the time, and he just saw his fellow Indian countrymen getting beaten. And at the moment when he saw those people getting beaten, and when he first held his first rally and he was getting beaten, he came to the conclusion at that point in his mind thinking, you know what, violence doesn't solve things. And he even mentioned the concept of Jesus saying to turn the other cheek. We think about Mother Teresa. I don't agree with her doctrines and such, but humanity acknowledges her for her service to the poor. But one of the experiences that she experienced was she was in a poor village one day, and walking among there, all she saw was all these mothers holding dead babies as if they were alive, rocking them, talking to them, trying to comfort them. And she said at that moment, that's when she really realized, you know what, we need to value people. Another interesting story is probably the guy who was probably the richest man to have ever lived in the United States. His name is Andrew Carnegie. You might actually know him from Carnegie Hall and so forth. But Andrew Carnegie was a poor young man. He grew up and he was actually the servant of a railroad mogul. And this guy decided to actually make this guy his mentee. And so he mentored Andrew Carnegie, and Carnegie actually got rich because he was the one who implemented putting steel in our buildings and our bridges. Steel was everywhere. And he got to the point where he got so wealthy, he sold his company to J.P. Morgan and had, in today's value, about $400 to $500 billion, easily dwarfing all the richest people in today's economy. But one of the things about him was, in order to get his money, he had to do some things that were not great. A lot of people died because of him. A lot of unethical decisions were made because of him. And so when he got older, he said, you know what? I made a lot of wrong decisions that affected humanity. And I want to do something that will benefit it. And he actually came up with a very powerful quote that says, you know what? I spent the first half of my life earning money. Now I want to spend the second half of my life giving it away. And I thought that was a powerful statement because he acknowledged, you know, people are more powerful, are more valuable than money, more valuable than things. We need to prioritize people because that's what God did. And when I think about my experiences, sometimes I'll go to the book, and every time I go to the book, the more I realize how much God values me, how much God values humanity, and how much God actually expects us to do something about it. I remember going down to Mexico and doing a Bible lectureship. I was going there and edifying the church, and I was doing a lectureship down there. And when I was there, I experienced something that just really broke my heart. It was 115 degrees, and all I wanted was something to drink. Coke was pretty much the soda that was available. So I was walking around, and you remember all those old television commercials with all the kids with the bloated tummies and the flies flying around and everything like that? Well, I remember walking, it's 115 degrees out, I'm here dying, and I see this little girl just tugging at my pants. Couldn't be, she was smaller than my daughter. Bloated tummy, flies were flying around, her face was dirty, and her feet were on this hot cement. And it's 115 degrees, and she's there begging, and you can tell she's begging. And I didn't have much money in my pocket, so I gave her a few little coins, and I felt really bad. It was maybe 25 cents our money. And she got so excited, and she ran into the store, and she bought this little piece of bread. And she was happy. And she scarfed it down like it was the most valuable thing in life. You know, I keep having experiences like that. Whether it's helping with the youth in Yakima, where almost all the kids, pretty much every kid except for one family, came from a fatherless home. And I saw the pain in their eyes. Or the experience of being around a lot of